Welcome back to the Board Game Bambinos. In today's episode, we will review a board game pulled straight from the arcade cabinets. The game is centered on a gaming classic released by Namco in 1980. If you guessed it, that's right, Pac-Man. No, not the video game, the board game by Buffalo Games, and you guessed, Bandai Namco Entertainment. This pulls the classic arcade gem into a three-dimensional tabletop. The game plays out in the same fashion as the video game. Pac-Man must move about the maze, consuming power pellets, fruit, and even ghosts on occasion, trying to complete the board. On the other end, you have the game's colorful ghosts set on chasing down and taking out the yellow menace. Unlike the arcade game, you will not have to play this alone, as it is split into two sets of players. One plays as Pac-Man, and the other players take control of the four ghost characters. Let's start by how you play the main man himself. The player controlling Pac-Man objective is to move about the board, attempting to rack up as much points as possible while evading the ghost. The Pac-Man player will begin each round by rolling the die and adding up the total to determine the number of spots they can move. Pac-Man racks up points by consuming power pellets and other items such as fruit. It must be noted that the power pellets you consume only add to your score if that section of the board is completed. Each section of the board totals 800 points, so this is a good goal to go after. To create the feel of the classic arcade, as Pac-Man moves across the power pellets, the player will push them down, signifying the pellet has been consumed. Along with that, the Pac-Man pawn is battery operated and creates the original Pac-Man sound as the player moves around the board. This brings great authenticity and really starts to feel as though the game is taking on a life of its own. As you move around the board, each section has one power-up that can be activated. These power tokens flip the tables, as the ghost can now be eaten by Pac-Man for added points to the total score. This also changes how the Pac-Man moves, as instead of rolling all three die and moving based on the total amount, each dice will be rolled individually, allowing Pac-Man to move 3 separate times based on each dice roll. Don't worry, each person playing will get a turn to play the Pac-Man, as once the person playing Pac-Man either completes the board or gets knocked out by a ghost character, they record their total points earned that round. The roll is then passed around to each person until everyone has had a chance to play Pac-Man. At the end, players can compare their high scores to see who the number one player is. As mentioned before, each of the ghosts can be played by an individual. These players will draw from the card pile and move each ghost the number of spaces shown for that character on the card. During this phase, fruit power-up cards can be drawn as well. Each time this happens, a power-up will be placed on the Pac-Man starting location, making it available to be eaten and more points added. If a power token is activated and the ghost characters are eaten, they are not out of the game. Instead, the player will remove their ghost pawn and replace it with the matching eyes. These eyes will now become what the player moves each round, until they are able to make it back to the ghost starting location and respawn their pawn. The ghost characters can simply knock Pac-Man out of the game by moving into the same space, making it game over. Players can also bump up the challenge level of the game by playing arcade mode. In this playthrough, the Pac-Man character gets 2 lives to try and rack up points. Special yellow level 2 cards will be added to the draw pile that give the ghost characters more moves per draw. So, with that out of the way, sit back and let us waka 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 our way through Pac-Man, the board game. Well, what can I say? It's Pac-Man. I mean, it's Pac-Man's a classic, gotta love it. And I mean, this is literally taking the arcade game and bringing it to life. It's one of the greats. Yeah, I mean, the whole premise is pretty much the same concept. You know, Pac-Man, you're trying to get the high score, you're trying to collect points. It's competitive. Got the ghosts moving around, you know, trying to attack you and stuff. So I thought it was great. You know, I really liked how they added in things like
the Pac-Man pawn, could make noise. That was really kind of cool.
Yeah.
I like kind of having the effect of when you could consume the power pellets, so you could actually push them down and,
the pegs,
give the impression they were being consumed. So, and it was a pretty fast-paced game. You could go through pretty quickly and pass the Pac-Man around and do a couple of rounds.
Once you got the flow of it, yeah.
I mean, what are your thoughts about it? What did you think?
Well, the first thing that I liked about it right away were the effects. I love the little sounds and the pegs actually drop down into the boards. I thought, and then even when the ghost, if you activated the little orb things, and you actually when the ghost would be affected,
vulnerable,
it would you had the little blue tokens that you could collect when you ate them and things like that.
And then even taking out the pawns and replacing them with the eyes, that's what happens in the game. You consume them and then they turn into little eyes and go back to the box to come back out. So really fun game. I think it's also a really easy game to learn. I mean, there's not much to it. It's Pac-Man. I mean, other than a few different rules and some cards and dice. I mean,
it is. I think it's worthy to note that the game board said 10 and up. But I think
it'd be easy for a kid
younger than
play.
that.
So I mean, definitely it's not extremely hard, not some difficult strategy game. I mean, it's Pac-Man. There's not much to say. I mean,
very basic. Yeah.
But it was fun.
Super fun.
We played a few rounds. I thought it was fun. It was pretty fast paced, and basically, you beat me by quite a few points, but it was still fun nonetheless. So, I mean, I definitely recommend it. I think it's a really fun game. It is a little bit different in terms of how your board's set up. There's a little more pieces to it, but it's not hard to put together.
Right.
And once you figure out how to play, I mean, we had a pretty good flow going. It goes pretty fast. Yeah, I like it. What any thoughts from you?
Yeah, I think Pac-Man is an awesome game. I love arcade games, even though I'm not very great at them. But this is an awesome rendition of it. I really like it. It actually triggers the same effects that you get from the arcade game.
It does. It does.
When
it really does.
Yeah, when you get when you pick up the fruit, or when you hit the orb and activate the ghost effect.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same rushes you get when you're playing the arcade game. So I think it's really authentic. It's really cool. I definitely give this one a thumbs up.
All right. So until next time, folks.